Hello, everyone. Welcome to the A+ study group pre-show. We are nearly ready to get going. I think we've got everything in place we should have. If you're watching live, we'll be starting in about 10 minutes. This is the pre-show. If you're watching this on a replay, we'll still be starting in about 10 minutes, but you'll be able to fast forward if you want to. But this is the good part right here, where nothing is happening. It's me checking cameras. So I should probably do that. Camera check, camera check, camera check. Let's change a few things on our screen. You don't see me checking cameras this time. But let's change a view. Get rid of this, add that, change this to here. That looks good. Let's get some analytics up so I can see if anybody cares to watch. That may not be that important to anyone, ultimately. So we're good. We're in good shape. Things are working. Things are alive. So now all we have to do is really get to, oh, thank goodness, the number on my screen jumped from 0 to actually people. So welcome people. The challenge is just making sure that all my ducks in a row. So I've got presentation ready to go. Highlighting is up. Chat room is there. Do I have my Skype ready? I think I do. Skype is up and running. I'm ready. I just have to get that ready to call in. That's good. What else? I think we're good to go. I think we're ready. This has been this is going to be a busy month. November and December is always busy, not for busy in the sense that there's more things to do, but there's so many holidays here in the United States. November, a holiday this month is Thanksgiving. It was last month for Canada. And then next month, obviously, the holiday season of Christmas, Hanukkah, et al. Everything seems to happen in December. So I have already pre-written almost everything I needed to pre-write for November, except for the last week of pop quiz questions. So I need to get on that. And then November will be done because I want to take some time to relax, spend time with the family as well. So that's good. Now, in the meantime, of course, I'm still shooting the new A+ videos. That's just one of those things that's ongoing. So those will be out, I don't know, someday. Whenever the new A+ exam comes out, whenever that is. What's that going to be? January? There's still a bit of time before you'll see any of that. So there's that anyway to get things going. So we are ready to go though for this one. It could be cooler in here. So let's fix that. That part could be nicer if it was a little more air conditioned. It's very humid here. It's a rainy day here in the headquarters, Tallahassee, Florida. It's very humid. What is the temperature outside? It is outside temperature 78 degrees Fahrenheit. And the outside humidity is just awful. It's 100%. It's rainy. It's rainy and humid. So there you go. Well, thank you for giving me Christmas off. See, these folks are so nice. Technically, nothing was scheduled on Christmas. So we have that going for us. What do we have scheduled on Christmas? When is Christmas? It's on a Tuesday. So no, we wouldn't do it. On December, it's the 5th, 12th, and 19th are the 3 study groups. So we'll get them well done before the holidays. That's why I move them around sometimes during the year. Like in July, we start our study groups later in the month. By the time November rolls around, I'm doing them earlier in the month so that those holidays near the end of the month will be available. Although this month didn't work out so well. Thanksgiving kind of shows up 2 days after, a day after a study group, isn't it, this month? Is that what we're doing? Let's look at November. Yeah, so the 14th, the 21st, we'll be doing a study group. And, of course, the 22nd is Thanksgiving here in the United States. So that's, I couldn't get around it. Neither one of those Wednesdays at the end of the month was any good, and I wanted to have at least a week off. Those are the problems you come up with. I really should set them up so that we do multiple ones during the week. I could do 3 in a week and be done for the month. That's no fun. I don't know if my voice would be able to handle that anyway. I can barely handle this. I'm barely able to talk now. So I don't know about doing multiple study groups day after day after day. We could not do that because I'm talking most of the time. So that would not happen. We've got about 5 minutes before we get started. get a warm cup of coffee, get a cold beverage, get a comfortable chair. We'll be talking in a moment about how you can follow along with the questions and answers as well. All of those things will become very apparent once we begin. I will tell you everything. And if you're watching on YouTube, there is a YouTube no chat on the YouTube. So you may want to go to professormesser.com/live for the chat. So there you go. That's what it is. So what are we doing next? We've got this ready to go. Okay, it's working. I think we're just ready. I think it actually worked out. Actually did not work out. I had a camera that did not appear. Many of you know I've got the camera here. We've got a camera here. The camera 3 was not coming up on the TriCaster today. Just not appearing at all. And it was on the TriCaster. I had to turn it off and turn it back on again. And now it works. Yeah, I don't know either, but there you go. Turn it off, turn it back on again. Who would have thunk? This is real world stuff we do. People think that that's a joke, as if that's turn off. No, that's how you fix it. That's how that particular problem resolved itself. I turned it on earlier. I turned it on today about 9 o'clock local time, my time, Eastern Standard Time now. I turned it on and it worked fine, but I did not check the cameras. It was working, but that one camera just did not come up, camera 3. It takes me a bit. I have to plug different things in different places. I'm running at an HD resolution on the screen that's in front of me right now. Normally, it's in a much larger resolution. That screen supports a much bigger, a much higher resolution. And so that higher resolution doesn't work on the TriCaster. So when I plug in the TriCaster, that has to go back to the HD resolution, 1280 by 720. There's all those things that have to happen. When I say 1280 by 720, it's 1080 by whatever it is. What am I running this one at? I think I am running at full HD on here. Am I really, though? Let's find out. No, it's graphics. Let's look at the live video. We got a lot going on here. So camera 1 is it is 1080i. That's what I'm running through an SDI connection. That's handy. It is, but it's being streamed to you over 720 for many different reasons. But I think it looks okay. Looks all right for now. Eventually we'll stream at 1080, but not today. Not today. 2 minutes, folks. 2 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. We'll be getting started. 2 minutes. Let's go to this right here. Let's start that up. What else do we need to do here? I think we're ready. ProfessorMesser.com/live is where you need to be to participate in the live chat. I can see the live chat. The folks from Alpha have checked in. Hopefully you're in Alpha now. There's a lot. We've cleared the land in Bluntstown that was blown over by the trees. We could not get down the driveway. That's all been straightened up. We can now at least get down the driveway. So there's that. And amazingly, the house was relatively undamaged. I have to go over there and install a new satellite television dish, which is good. I think the dish I had there before was an SD. So now I can upgrade that to HD. These are it's good that the hurricane came through. Maybe not. Maybe not. Joseph is there from Tennessee. Welcome. It's a good excuse anyway. Maybe we should just not do the hurricane next time and just upgrade. I think that's really where you're focusing on that. What else do we need to do here? What is happening? Why are these things happening on my site? What is going on? Oh, it's all of you people. Tampa's here. Florida's just in here. Florida's in the chat today. So that's, folks are all over this stuff. Let's see if we can fix some of these things. I can't. How does this Facebook app is awful. It's awful. Don't use Facebook app. But it's time. Forget Facebook app. Let's do something. Let's do a live stream. We're just about ready. That's ready. This is ready. It's the top of the hour. California's here. South Carolina's here. All the details of what you need will be at professormesser.com/live, including the Socrative links, which I will also give to you after we begin right now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2018 A+ Study Group, coming to you live from the world headquarters here in Tallahassee, Florida of Messer Studios. My name is James Messer. I'll be your host for this next hour of live Q&A. We're going to do all A+ all the time today. I'll talk to you in a moment about how you can see all of those A+ things that we will be talking about, answer the questions live and in person, how you can participate in the chat. If you're here live, you can go to professormesser.com/live. There's a live chat right there. And I'm there talking to folks already in the pre-show. You're welcome to rewind and see all that craziness. What we're going to focus on for the next hour, though, is A+ Q&A. And then after that, I usually open up the phone lines and we can talk about whatever you'd like, really. Whatever's going on in your world. It might be IT related. It might not be IT related. That's completely up to you. We do one of these every month. You can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and see what's coming up next. I'm able to do this thanks to your support. As many of you know, you can watch every single one of my A+ videos. The entire course, every topic from the CompTIA exam objective is covered in these videos, and they are available for you to watch for free. Every minute of every video you can watch for free online. There's no paywall. There's no registration. There's no nonsense like that. Just go out and watch them and hopefully get a job, get a better job. That's the whole point of doing this after all. Some of you will also purchase an offline version, either of the videos, the audio, the course notes. You can find out about that at professormesser.com/download901. I also provide continuing education unit credit for this. Sometime in the first hour, I will give you instructions and a super secret code word that you can use to send to me, and then I'll send you back a digitally signed email that says you must have watched this. So we will talk about that particular piece. Don't worry so much about it now, but just listen in during this first hour. Sometime in there will be some instructions, assuming I don't forget. What could possibly happen? The 901 and 902 exams were released on December the 15th, 2015. And some of you have noticed we're getting close to that 3-year recycle period for getting a new set of exams. What we probably expect to have happen is the 901 and the 902 exams will still be around until about July 15th, we're thinking. So we've got plenty of time. If you're studying for your A+ exam right now, keep studying. Keep studying the 901, keep studying the 902. Even if a new set of exams is updated and released in what we think will be January, the 901 and 902 will still be available for another 6 months. So you've got plenty of time to work towards earning your A+ certification. Never wait for this. Now, if you think you know that it's going to take you a year to do this, maybe you want to go out and find the 1001 and 1002 exam requirements. They're almost identical. They're very similar to each other. They're not a dramatic set of changes. So even if you did study 901, 902, it's not much to redirect if you ever wanted to. It's a win-win situation. Doesn't matter which one you choose. Just pick a couple and go with that. Now, if you're already certified and you need to renew, you can take a renewal exam. They have one that's specifically for the A+. It's one exam and you renew. Some people don't like to take exams again, like me. I don't like to take exams again. You can take a higher level CompTIA exam. So if you took your Network Plus, Security Plus, or one of the higher level exams, that would automatically renew your A+. That's good. Or you can take a higher level third-party exam from Microsoft, from Cisco, from other organizations, from VMware. You do have to pay some CEU fees if you do that. And or you could earn CEUs like the ones we'll be doing today. CompTIA also introduced recently the CertMaster CE, which is a 3 to 6 hour online renewal process, no CEU fees. You renew immediately, no gathering of CEU credits, no extra exams to take. You don't have to go into an exam center. You sit down with their app. You go through it. It takes 3 to 6 hours, which would be you probably can do it in shorter time than that, quite honestly. And as soon as you've done it, you're renewed. So you could theoretically wait until the very last day of eligibility for your 3-year certification. Take that CertMaster CE and you're renewed another 3 years. It would be so easy to have that there. So those are important things to think about if you're planning to renew. Some options that are there. You can find out a lot of information on the CompTIA website about renewals. It's all there and available for you. So you've got all the details. We're going to go through questions and answers, though, today. We're going to talk a lot about questions and answers. We're going to talk about 901 and 902. This will be combined together into a single set of live streams here. So we can go through any of these topics could show up. So we will be going through all of those. Stay tuned. We'll be hitting those questions in just a moment. I also have questions online. Some of you like practice tests, and I recommend that you get a good book, you watch the videos, you do as much hands-on as possible, and you go through some pop quiz questions. You go through some questions that can see if you remember some of these topics. You can find a lot of details and hundreds of questions on my website at professormesser.com/popquiz. This is a live stream that's available for you to see anytime you'd like. The most recent is usually at professormesser.com/live. They're, of course, archived on my site and on YouTube. There's also an audio version of this available. If you just like to have it in your car while you're driving somewhere, have it automatically appear in your podcatching program, you can certainly do that by going to professormesser.com/podcast. The RSS feeds are there. You can play them from that page. It's completely up to you. Anything you'd like to do. I try to make it as easy as possible for you to get access to this information. Now you've got audio, you've got video. The only thing I don't do is write it out for you. Although you'll notice in my course, every single video has a transcript. Every single video has closed captioning that are done by human beings. So they're very, very, very good closed captions. So that's another bonus for you. Today, though, we're going to do questions. Let's get to these questions that we're going to do. How does this work anyway? If you're watching this live, you can participate in the live Q&A process. We've got these questions available for you to see. All you have to do is pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. Stands for something. I forget what that stands for. But if you go to that link, you'll find there's a question there waiting for you. Some of you like to use the app to do this. There's an app you can get for your mobile device. You can get that a Google app, a Apple app for your iOS, your Android devices. That is called the Socrative Student app, the student app for Socrative. And it will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right. PROFESSORMESSER, which nobody spells right anyway. I should make different. I wish there was a way to do aliases of names to be able to do that, but there's no way to do that. So make sure you spell it right. And if you do spell it right, you will see a question that is waiting there that we had last month. I call this the Study Group Rewind, just to see if we are in the Socrative app or the Socrative website and we're able to do this. And the question you'll see there is, a company would like to protect all user data sent across the network when working outside the office. Which of these technologies would provide this security? Would it be a DLP appliance, a multi-factor authentication, host-based firewall, VPN concentrator, or full disk encryption? So a company would like to protect all user data sent across the network when working outside the office. Which of those technologies would provide this security? So you can go to the Socrative app. You can go to professormesser.com/QA, and then you can step through these possible answers. You can see in real time, we're getting updates on the screen here. And if we look at the statistics currently, we can see that most people have chosen D, VPN concentrator. 68% of you chose that. 14% said multi-factor authentication. 10% host-based firewall, 5% DLP, and 2% full disk encryption. So the vast majority, or certainly the very large majority of you, said VPN concentrator. 70% of you said VPN concentrator, and you'd be right. That's exactly how you protect data. Going across the network, you create a secure tunnel back to the VPN concentrator that's at your corporate office. It decrypts that data and sends it inside so that the other devices can understand what you're asking for. And then, of course, it repeats that process on the other side. It's your laptop that decrypts it when it gets to the other side back to you. So you've got a little app you run that connects to your VPN concentrator. And now if anybody is in that link between your laptop and between the VPN concentrator, it's all encrypted data. They don't get to see anything. They don't get to see any of that. So that's the one thing that does help out. If you're in a situation where you're trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I protect this data? And if you work for a company that has this type of thing, you probably have this already. You probably have a VPN concentrator and you are using that VPN concentrator to protect your data. So if you're one of the folks that did answer D, VPN concentrator, the 70% of you got that one absolutely right. And that was a question from last month. So that was there to see, are you able to get into Socrative? Are you able to use these apps? Is everything working the way you would expect? Well, yes, it is. So now let's do some actual A+ questions. Let's step through things we would see from the exam, questions you've never seen before. I write all of these questions every month, so they'd be something that is unique. You never run into these questions before. If you take your A+ certification exam, one of the things you'll notice is they're not all multiple choice like this last question was. You're going to get a handful of questions at the beginning of the exam that are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. These are questions that are not multiple choice. They are anything but multiple choice. They could be fill in the blank. They could be drag and drop. They could be that you have to put in a command prompt. You have to type something into the command prompt to answer the question that's presented on the screen. They might be putting things in a particular order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. It might be a matching question. You never know what they're going to throw at you. So what I like to do on this first part of the study group is our first question is a performance-based question. And the performance-based question this month is a matching question. Here it is. I have a bunch of interfaces on the screen, and I want you to match the interfaces to the name. Now, one good part about this is that there are 6 interfaces, and I have 6 options on these interfaces. So it's a 1-to-1 match. That's not always the case on the exam. You might get 8 or 10 different interface names, and you only match still one of those to an interface, so you have some left over. That will be much harder. Maybe I'll do that next time. Make it a little bit more difficult. Obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, it's difficult to describe the interfaces that are on the screen, but I will tell you what the different interface names are. A was a SPDIF, B is Ethernet, C is USB, D is DVI, E is DisplayPort, and F is eSATA. So you've got 6 different options to match to the 6 different interfaces, and I've just got to fill in the blank. Let me make it so that you can fill in the blank. Boom, there you go, on your Socrative. And you can put the answers in there. So if you think they're matched up perfectly now, it would be 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, 6F. So you don't have to type names in. It's very easy to type these in. One of the things that you have to do, though, is remember what you put in. Because when you submit the answers in Socrative, the screen disappears. It doesn't show you the answers anymore, or it didn't used to. I don't think it still does. That would be a good feature request for the folks at Socrative. So that's one that might give you a little more detail. Make sure you remember that, because we're going to go through these after you look at them to figure these out. I like in the chat room where people say, isn't there supposed to be a study group right now? I'm not sure if they're actually watching the live stream and wondering, what's he doing? Or if they're actually, okay, they did make it was not an insult towards the questions that we were doing. I appreciate that. That you never know. It could be. This is one of the challenges we have. One of the things on your 901 exam is that you need to know these interface names. You need to be able to visualize what they are, recognize what they are, and know what they're used for. I really gave you a very easy question here. If I really wanted to make this difficult, I would have put more interface names in here. And I probably would not have put the interface names. I would have put what the interface does. So as you're going through these 6 interfaces, what does that interface do? What would I use that interface for? How would that interface be used? If you know that, then you're in pretty good shape for the exam, for those particular exam objective topics. Those would be pretty good. We've got a few answers that have come in. Everybody's busy Googling. Stop doing that. But now you see the interfaces. Let's see how we did with these interface names. So let's go to the first set. So that first interface, number 1, that kind of large 3-road interface at the top, number 1 is a D. It's a DVI interface. That's the digital visual interface that is available. You still see these around, by the way. They're on the back of not only computers, but the monitors. Sometimes you have one device that has DVI and another device that has HDMI. Fortunately, they are electrically compatible if you have the digital versions of those. So it makes it very easy. They're a video interface port. So if you see this very large, funny-looking interface, and I tried to make these interfaces somewhat relative in size to each other, so that they are all relative to each other. It's a big interface. It's a big honking interface, and it's usually on a video card or on a monitor. Number 2, the second one on our list, is matched to F. That is an external SATA connection, an eSATA. So if you see this on a laptop, on a external hard drive, It's a very common way to connect at very high speeds instead of using USB, especially USB 2.0, which is relatively slow compared to an eSATA. You've got a little bit more speed these days on the eSATA. It could be even slower on USB 2.0. Fortunately, USB 3 makes it a little bit less important to have this extra SATA external connection. And I think you're going to find that some of the newer USB technologies are going to start becoming more, even more ubiquitous. They're already pretty ubiquitous, but even more ubiquitous. So that becomes important. The third interface here, you can see there's little lights on it. 8-pin connections. That's an Ethernet connection. Number 3 matches to be Ethernet. That should be a googly one to do, one easy one to Google and figure out for those of you Googling. Some of you are saying, no, I didn't Google. Good for you. You should always go through these questions as if you're in the exam. We're just trying it out. Question number 4 is this funny USB connection. This is one of these USB 3.0 connections that you would find. It's a type B connection, and it's one that becomes very useful to have that in this particular view because it does have that very large connector. You may be used to the smaller one, the USB 2.0, but it has this extra connection on the USB 3.0. So we're getting close to the end. We should be able to match these two last ones up very carefully. Number 5 is a SPDIF, S-P-D-I-F, the Sony Philips digital audio interface. And you can see SPDIFs that are fiber, some are copper. It's a very standard digital audio connection. If you have an audio connection on your computer, probably most commonly on your home theater systems or on your console gaming systems, very common to find the SPDIF connector. And fun to say. Which means the last option, number 6, the only thing left is DisplayPort, option E. That is a video connection as well, plugging in the connections for your monitor. And now we have all of the interfaces. Number 1 was DDVI. Number 2 was FE-SATA or SATA. It can be pronounced either way. Neither one is better than the other. 3B is Ethernet. 4C is USB. 5A is SPDIF. And 6E is DisplayPort. And you can either say it DisplayPort or DisplayPort. Who knew? Did not know that. Hopefully you recognize those. There are a lot of interfaces on the exam. Make sure you're familiar with them. Make sure you know what they look like. Go look at the computers you're using. See what kind of, you should be able to name every single interface on the back of the computers. Randomly look at the back of a computer. You should be able to do that. And if you do that, you may be ready to take that particular part of the exam. Let's do some multiple choice questions. I've got one ready to go for you. We can go back to something that's not such a performance-based question and answer one like this, which asks, what type of technology would be most associated with a CCFL? What type of technology would be most associated with a CCFL? Would it be OLED? Would it be WPA2? Would it be SSD? Would it be LCD? Would it be CPU? There you go. You've got these technologies that could be associated with CCFL. Is it OLED, WPA2, SSD, LCD, or CPU? If you think you know the answers, you should go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer the questions. Please no answers or hints in the chat. You can, of course, go to professormesser.com/QA. All the questions are there. You're able to get the details for all of those pieces. Maybe the idea of figuring out technologies revolves a lot around acronyms. Not only in the A+, because certainly the A+ exam has tons of acronyms in it, but the Network Plus and Security Plus just compound that. You're going to be using acronyms a lot in this business because we don't want to always pronounce out the entire set of words. Sometimes we don't even remember what the words are. We know that PCIe, we know what that is, but sometimes we never refer to it as the peripheral connect interface. All of these things that we use, we never get to a point that we're talking to somebody and saying, did you try plugging it into the peripheral connection interface extended? No, we didn't. No, how about a PCI Express interface? That's what we're talking about whenever we go through all of these. And that's why you often find folks using these terms interchangeably. So you need to know what the terms are, and probably more important, you need to know what these terms do. I'm giving you a very easy question here to be able to get this. So hopefully it's one where if you ever get to a point where you're looking at an acronym, you're wondering, I don't know what this acronym is. Don't memorize what the name is. You should know what the name is, but also memorize what it does. That's probably one of the biggest tips I can give you for the exam. So let's see how we did on what technology would be most associated with a CCFL. 69% of you, 68% of you said D, LCD. 21% of you, still a very large number, said OLED. 9% said WPA2, 2% said CPU, and only 1% said SSD. So what is it? Where would we run into a CCFL? Where does that come from? A CCFL is a cold cathode fluorescent lamp. A cold cathode fluorescent lamp. Where would we use a fluorescent lamp? Well, on our systems, we use them on our displays as a backlight. We use a lot of backlights in this particular system, in these computers that we use, especially these newer displays that we're using. This is extremely common. You'll see it on probably older laptops. It's not a newer technology. It is being phased out quite rapidly, if completely at this point. Very unusual to find CCFL now on some of these laptops. There's better ways to do this. The problem, though, is that for LCD, you need a backlight. You need some way to be able to see what the LCD is displaying. And the only way to do that is put a light behind the LCDs, because the LCDs don't create their own light. There's actually a light behind your LCD screen right now. So you've got on your laptop, on your desktop computers, if it's an LCD monitor, there's a light in there. And it could be a cold cathode fluorescent lamp. These days, though, we see more of the LED LCD displays. In fact, sometimes you'll see them referred to as, that's an LED display. Well, no, it's an LCD display, but it's being backlit with LED instead of cold cathode fluorescent lamps. One of the benefits for the LED is it uses less power. The LEDs are much smaller. You now don't have to convert them from DC to AC power, because the fluorescent lamps need AC and the LEDs need DC, which the laptops and displays already have. So you don't need this extra step of converting from one to the other. So that does come in handy to know what those backlights are. So if we looked at the answers to this one, you can see LCD would be the right answer here, because that is the only technology in this list that uses those cold cathode fluorescent lamps. Now, wait a second. OLED is a display. In fact, it has LED right in the name. OLED displays. What about that one? That seems like if it's a display, it should have a backlight, except OLED displays do make their own light. They don't need a backlight. They're very unique in that perspective. They don't have LED backlights or LCD. They are themselves their own emitting diodes. They do it all by themselves, so you don't need any light in there. WPA2 is obviously an encryption mechanism for wireless networks. That does not fit with the fluorescent light idea. SSDs is storage technologies, this solid state storage. So that is not fluorescent light. And of course, CPU, the central processing unit in a computer, is also not CCFL. So you wouldn't run into that either. So hopefully it's giving you some perspective, some of the things to go through. I'm going to shift some things around on my screen here real quick. And I've got another question here. I want to go through another one. So by the way, if you did answer D, LCD, 69% of you got those absolutely right with that. Well done. Let's, in the chat room, people are asking in my videos, I talk about OLED displays and how they tend to get less capable over time. The organic aspect of the LED tends to wear out over time. And so this can take, and they're asking, how long does that last? Well, it depends, interestingly enough, on where you live, at what elevation you live at. At certain elevations, you're not even able to use OLED. And once you get high enough into the mountains, OLEDs don't become useful very much at all. And they will tell you, if you look at what an OLED display is, you go out to the LG website and you look at their specifications, they'll tell you, yeah, if you live above 5,000 feet or whatever the number is, that's not going to work very well for you. But OLEDs, they'll last for years and years and years and years, but there is a certain amount of time where that organic capability is no longer available. So it's one of those things to keep in mind. If you're planning to get a really, really good television, OLED may not be the right answer for you. So it's you'll have to have a look and see how that works for you. Let's do another question. I've got one here which talks about Linux. This must be a 902 question, and it asks, which Linux command would allow a system administrator to configure a file as read-only? What Linux command would allow a system administrator to configure a file as read-only? Would it be pwd? Would it be chmod? Would it be dd? Would it be sudo? Or would it be apt-get? One of those things. One of those 5 things. You Linux people, you should know this one straight ahead. Would it be pwd, chmod, dd, sudo, or apt-get? One of those things. Another problem with OLED is that they have very bad burn-in. You know, sort of the very old LED, LCD type displays had bad burn-in. The OLEDs are really bad burn-in. So if you get an OLED display, I have an OLED television that I use primarily when I'm sitting down at night. I'll watch a little bit of TV. I turn this on. If you don't do anything to the screen, if you pause the screen and nothing on the screen is moving, in 2 minutes it goes into a screensaver mode to protect itself. And it has to, because if you leave anything on the screen for any amount of time, it may burn that in. It's kind of a problem if you do gaming. OLED looks really good, but you need to make sure you get a high-quality OLED display that doesn't burn in so well. That could be a problem. Sometimes the OLEDs will move things around. They have this ability to move it by a pixel or two to try to make it so that it's at least changing a little bit on the screen. Very common to see that. You can't even see it with your eyes. There's so many pixels, but it may move them around on the screen just a little bit if you have something stuck there. Back to these Linux commands. You do have to know Linux for the A+ exam. You also have to know Mac OS. You have to know Windows. There's a lot there. So this doesn't change very much when you get to even the newer exams. There's still a lot of Linux there you have to know. There's not much change between those exams. The only thing that's changed is they changed the versions of Windows you need to know, and not by very much, interestingly, because now, of course, out in the industry, there's Windows 7, there's Windows 8, and there's Windows 10 you'll run into. You'll run into anything these days. There is a little bit of Vista that's still out there, crazily enough, but fortunately, I think if you know 7, you pretty much know Vista at this point. So which Linux command would allow a system administrator to configure the file as read-only? Well, it's not going to move anything on my screen. What happened there? Am I even doing anything? I am doing something. Let's see if I can move it myself. There it is. Who needs me? Oh, I've got a fade to black turned on. See, it's what happens when you're live. You never know what's going to happen. Let's see how we answer the Linux command that will allow administrator to configure files read-only. 58% of you said chmod. Is that really right, though? Because 17% of you said sudo, 11% said dd, 9% said pwd, and 5% said apt-get. If you've never worked with Linux, you might be surprised to know all 5 of those are real Linux commands. So you don't want to get in that situation where you're trying to figure out, what is this? How do I do this? Where does this come from? How do I break down what these different options are? You need to know all of these Linux commands and more for the 902 exam. So make sure you know what those commands are. You might be asked about them on the exam. Well, 59% of you said chmod, but is that really the right answer? Could that possibly be the right answer? Yes, it is. Chmod is exactly what changes the mode of those particular commands. So if you need to create a file and make it read-only, if you need to make it so that everybody can write to the file, this happens a lot. You've set up a caching directory. You need everything to be able to write to that caching directory. The chmod command is a very common one to use to be able to do that. So if you're working with Linux at all, and you're installing applications, you're changing these files, you need to make it so that certain people have access to certain files, you're going to be using the chmod command. You're going to be able to set it for particular users, for particular groups, and then everyone else. It's a very powerful utility, and you need to understand it. Otherwise, you'll see it written in the instructions. As you're installing the application, it says, go to this directory and set chmod 777 on this file. And you're wondering, what am I doing? What is it that I'm actually typing in? This is what you're typing in. It's the chmod command. Make sure you're aware of that, because that is the right answer, B, chmod. 17% of you said sudo, which is a system administrator program that allows you to run an application as the super user. It is literally super user, do this, even though you may be logged in as someone who is not a super user, which is probably a good idea. It's a good best practice. 10% of you said DD, which is an imaging program on Linux. That is not what we're looking for. 9% of you said PWD, which is a PWD. Is that the password change or is it the current directory? See, you got to know those two as well. And then 5% said apt-get. Apt-get is the update program. And the chat room's like, of course it's the present working directory. It's not the password changing, which is passwd. So you need to know the differences between those. I should have put both of those and then asked which one it was. So that'll be the next one we do. We can go through those two differences. In fact, they even say in the exam objectives that one versus the other. They make a point to say you need to know that these are two different commands when you're working through them. chmod was the right answer, and it was 60% of you that got that one right. Answer B. Well done. You guys know your Linux. You got your Linux down to a science here. No problem there. Now, on your 901 and 902 exam, there is so much information you need to know. It is everything from hardware to operating systems to command line tools, troubleshooting, mobile devices, security, networking. It's all in there in both of these incredibly important exams. You have to pass both of these to get your A+ certification. What I've done is I've gone through all of my videos and I pulled out the most important things you need to know, and I put them into a set of course notes. Now, of course, I highly recommend you take your own notes. Not everybody has time to go through the 100+ videos that I have and write down everything that's important that's in there. So I did this for you already to have this. And this also makes a nice final check. This doesn't replace a book. It doesn't replace the videos. It doesn't replace hands-on. It doesn't replace any Q&A. But this is a great final study guide that you can go through before taking your exam. In fact, I've got it here. I can show it to you. Here's the course notes. They're in PDF format. You can see that the 901 exam and all the pieces of hardware you need to know, and the 902 exam with all the windows and the command lines and upgrade paths, they're all there. Everything is there in these course notes. Everything is there and also available on the website for you to purchase and download it right now. You can go to professormesser.com/A+CN, APLUSCN for the A+ course notes. There's also links on any of the websites from the pull-down menus and, of course, on the A+ video index page. It's also a great way to support the site. Some of you have said, I like the videos. Thanks for giving this to us free. Can I contribute to the site in any way? I don't take donations. I want to give you something for this hard-earned money that you're spending. So if you purchase the course notes, $15 a piece, every penny of that goes back to keeping all of this running. So thank you so much for your ongoing support with that. I hope you enjoy the course notes. And of course, even if you don't get the course notes, I hope you enjoy the entire course as well. Hopefully that can get you that job or get you that better job. Let's do another set of questions. I've got another one waiting for us here. Another multiple choice question, which talks about connecting to a wireless network. It says, as I put it on the screen myself, a user is trying to connect to a wireless network with a new laptop, but the name of the network name does not appear in the list of available options. You can see this was me typing late at night, apparently. The name of the network does not appear in the list of available options. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be A, the access point has disabled SSID broadcasts? Is it B, the laptop is not pointed toward the access point antennas? Is it C, the access point firmware needs to be updated? Is it D, the access point has disabled MAC filtering? Or is it E, the access point is configured with WPA2 encryption? So you've got a few options there as the user is trying to connect to a wireless network with a new laptop, but the name of the network does not appear in the list of available options. What do we do? Why is that? How did that work out? Maybe you know the answer. And if you do, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and you can get that answer. You can put it in there and see if you know what it happens to be. I think you might know, being able to get through all of those. Maybe you've gone through what these things happen to be. I think some of you have. Some of you have worked with wireless networks long enough, but some of you may not know anything about where all of these things come through with all of this piece. I'm going to take care of a few problems out here. Here we go. This is whenever you start looking at the questions and breaking them down, there are a few different things that you can do whenever you're trying to figure out these questions. If you think you know what it isn't, this may be one of those where you can start getting rid of particular answers whenever you start working through the details of this. Maybe you have been in a case where you've been working through all of those. This is one, of course, wireless networks are prevalent. You'll probably be getting at least a question or two on your exam about wireless networks. There's so many different topics you need to know on the wireless network side. That may be something you're able to work through on this exam, and this would be one of those types of questions. It's a topic you need to know about as you work through the details on these wireless networks. Let's look and see how we've done with this one. I think this is, of course, this is dealing, when we break these down, whenever I start looking at the details, some of you have been in this situation as well. The access point is disabled SSID broadcast. 88% of you chose A. But is that really the most likely reason for this issue? That's what we need to know about, is the most likely. If we're not seeing the network, what could it possibly be? Well, if the name doesn't appear, it could certainly be the network is too far away. But if we're sitting there with our new laptop in our building, we probably are not running into that problem. The most likely reason is that the wireless router has disabled the SSID advertisements, which means the list of that particular network will never appear on the list. That's one that you'd have to manually type in the name of the network to be able to connect to that particular configuration. Not pointed towards the access point antennas. Usually a laptop is omnidirectional. You don't have to point it in a particular direction, so that would not be the problem. The access point firmware needs to be updated. That's not the issue either. This is a very common configuration setting for access points. The access point has disabled MAC filtering. And although disabling MAC filtering would allow all access, it has nothing to do with what networks you can see in a list of available networks. And the access point is configured with WPA2 encryption. 5% of you chose that, but in fact, encrypting the network data itself has nothing to do with whether you can see that the network exists at all. If you really wanted to get rid of what's happening with the network, that's one of those things you could step through. And maybe you want to do both of those. Maybe you would really like to stop the list of things occurring, and of course, you might want to also encrypt data. So it's not uncommon to do both of those. So if you did answer letter A, the access point is disabled SSID broadcasts, got that one absolutely right. Well done with that. Let's do another one. I've got a multiple choice question for you. We can step through this. Number 6. Which of the following, we'll see the better view of this, which of the following would be the best way to limit the access to a website from a SOHO network? Again, all these networks we're dealing with. And networking is a big part of the A+ exams. Which of the following would be the best way to limit access to a website from a SOHO network? Would it be A, enable MAC filtering, B, define static IP addressing, C, enable WPS, D, configure 802.1x, or E, enable content filtering? One of those would be the best way to limit the access to a website from a SOHO network. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, put that answer in. Have some folks putting those details in there. Some of you, if you've worked with wireless networks and you know the wireless part of the A+ certification exam, some of these should come easy to you. But these, of course, are topics from the exam objectives. You have to know these details on limiting access to a website. It's a very good example of things you have to know on the exam. So hopefully it's one that you have done before, been working through it. One of the things I run into is that wireless networks have so many different configuration settings. Whenever I start going through the details of these, you've got to deal with authentication. You have to deal with encryption. You have to deal with these other settings as well. So you have to know exactly which one of those configuration settings changes that other thing that I'm working on. So hopefully that's one where you're familiar with all of those different switches and dials that you can turn, and you know what switches and dials will do what on the network. You do absolutely have to know that when you're working through all of these different pieces. And you can see here, we weren't quite as sure on this one as we were the last. If we look at the list of how we did, 73% of you chose enable content filtering, but 17% of you said enable MAC filtering. And then we've got single digits for defining static IP addressing, enabling WPS, and configuring 802.1x. So this is one where very specific scenario. We're asking to limit access to a website from the network we happen to be on. So we're not talking about limiting anyone's access to everything. We're talking about a very specific type of access that somebody needs to a website and enabling or disabling that access. And that scenario is perfect for content filtering. More specific, it probably would be URL filtering that we would be doing to provide that. We're controlling what information is transferred across the network based on what data is in the packets themselves. And you have to usually have some type of specialized software or specialized hardware to be able to see that data as it's either going inbound or outbound from your network. This might also be sensitive information you're trying to block. Maybe you'd like to block anyone transferring a social security number. Maybe you'd like to stop anybody who's transferring credit card numbers in the clear. You can set up content filtering to do those types of things as well. If many places, large organizations and small, will enable content filtering to limit what people are able to do on the network. This is very often a philosophical issue. If it's a K through 12 school in the United States, they are federally mandated to have a filter. If it's a corporation, some corporations are very tight with their filtering. Some have no filtering at all. It's completely up to the corporate culture in that organization as to how they're going to filter. And this, of course, is a good way to also filter out bad things. If you know it's a malicious website, we can block access to that website. If somebody's downloading a file that clearly has a virus inside of it, we can do content filtering to get rid of that virus so it doesn't get onto someone's workstation. All of this information, all of this filtering capability is content filtering. So anytime you see somebody use that generic term of content filtering, it could be so many different things. And in this case, limiting access to a website from a SOHO network, content filtering is the best way. Enabling MAC filtering, 16% of you chose that one, that would limit who's able to use the network at all. So if somebody plugged in their laptop, they brought everything up, they signed in, and they don't have access to any part of the wireless network, that's MAC filtering. Defining static IP addressing will, of course, make the IP addressing process more difficult for you, the administrator, but it does nothing for limiting what type of content you can view over the network. Enabling WPS, hopefully you're not doing this on your wireless network, but the WPS functionality was built so that you can simply provide someone with a personal identification number to gain access to your wireless network. And configuring 802.1x is a centralized form of authentication that you commonly see used on wireless networks, but it can be used in a lot of places as well. It does nothing for content filtering, which would be E. That is the right answer. 73% of you chose content filtering, and that is the correct answer. Well, we're doing a lot of Q&A today. There's plenty to go through. What I've done is I've taken all of the exam objectives, and I have made many questions and answers for all of these. Turns out to be about 1,300 questions in this compilation of 901 and 902 questions that are available. It's the most in the industry by far. They are available as PDF files on my website, and they are my pop quiz collection PDFs. So if you're someone who wants to, you've got a good book, you've gone through the videos, you've done some hands-on, but you need a lot more Q&A, this might be an option for you. And I've got both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions in these PDF books. You can have a look. They're all available on my website, professormesser.com/PQC Pop Quiz Collection. Let's do another question. We've got some time left to get through another multiple choice question, and here it is. The question asks, a laptop has a single CPU, but the Windows Task Manager shows two separate CPU values. Which of these would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be HTT? Would it be BIOS configuration? Would it be CPU caching? Would it be NX-bit? Or would it be integrated GPU? You've got 5 different options to choose from. In this case, the laptop has a single CPU, but the Windows Task Manager shows 2 separate CPU usage values. Which would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be HTT, BIOS configuration, CPU caching, NX-bit, or integrated GPU? All 5 of those, of course, are real things. They're real technologies to be able to go through this. But which one of these would be the most likely reason for this problem? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, answer in real time if you're here live. Now, if you're not here live, you can't answer at all. There's nothing there if you go to professormesser.com/QA. So if you're watching this on the replay, just make a note of what you think it is. Well, you'll be able to follow through with everybody else that's here as well to have all of those details. So it's a single CPU. You bring up the task manager. There's 2 separate CPU usage values. Why did that happen? Why is that there? Did you break something? No, you did not break something. It's a real thing, and you have to be familiar with this technology because it is listed in the CompTIA A+ exam objectives. So let's see what we think it is. How do we do? Well, this is one of those scenarios where we really didn't get a majority. 49% of us say answered A, HTT. 21% said CPU caching. 18% said integrated GPU. And then 8% said BIOS configuration, and 4% said the NX bit. So all of these, by the way, real things. Most all of these are associated with some type of CPU or internal technology. But why would we see multiple CPUs? If we go with the 51%, we finally got a majority there. On A, HTT, you'd be right. That is the hyper-threading technology. This is a way to make a single CPU sort of act like 2 CPUs. And I say sort of because really there's no way for one single CPU to really operate as if there were 2 of them there. Otherwise, we wouldn't buy systems with 2 CPUs in them. We would only need 1 of them. And obviously, if the CPU is busy doing something, it can't do something else at exactly the same time. It's a laws of physics issue, isn't it? But one of the challenges with CPU is while things are being moved in and out of the CPU, there's a delay. Well, while that delay is occurring, wouldn't it be great if we could put some other things there and run some things right behind it? We could effectively hyper-thread the communication to the CPU, which is what is really happening there. We're just shoving a bunch of information through the CPU as fast as possible. So you get about a 15 to 30% improvement, performance improvement over that. So it's a useful way to take a single core, a single CPU core, and really make it look like there's more operations going on, or at least stretch the capabilities of it, of being able to do that. So in the chat room, people are saying, so is this a core is a single CPU process? So we're saying here that a single core looks like 2 cores effectively. So that's where that comes in. If you're running any of the modern Windows or even other operating systems as well, there's HTT capabilities in those operating systems. And if you bring up your task manager and look at the CPU and you've wondered, wait, I thought I only had a single CPU in here. That may be why. You've got HTT. And that adds a little bit of a bonus, stretches the capabilities of that piece of hardware so that you're able to get even more CPU cycles out of a single physical device. If you are watching this video for continuing education credit, you'd like me to send you an email that has been digitally signed that gives you 1 webinar category is what it's called, a webinar category CEU. You have to follow these instructions. So not only is the information I'm giving you important, the process you follow is also important. You go to the top or the bottom of my website. There's a link there for Contact Us, which is really contact me. In there, it asks for your name and your email address. And then somewhere in that box of text, you need to put the term HTT. If you put that in, I'll know that you must have watched this particular study group, at least up to this point. So we can give you an hour's credit for doing that. There is also more text you can put into the box. I'm the one reading those. So if you want to put any messages or anything else, if you ever want to contact me, that's the link you would use. It comes to me. It comes to my phone. I'm able to have a look at what's going on. We can see what you've put in there. I can respond to you. It's a great way for me to be able to keep track of what's going on. And if you have any questions, it's a great way for me to communicate back with you. So make sure you follow those instructions. Go to the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address, somewhere in there, put the term HTT, and you'll be able to get, it takes me about a week. I'll get these mailed off to you. Sometimes I get to them faster. You might get a turnaround very quickly. Very often, though, it takes a little bit more time for me. So if you answered A, HTT, 53% of you answered that. That's really what I'm shooting for with these questions, is to get half of you knowing what it is and half of you not knowing what it is. I'm not trying to trick you or anything, but it helps more if we're going through these questions, if we're seeing new technologies and learning things as we go. So hopefully that's one that you were able to see and learn as we go. How about a troubleshooting question? These are going to be questions you run into on the exam. So let's do one. Here is your troubleshooting question that asks, a desktop computer is freezing randomly during the day. When the system stops, there are no status lights flashing, and the caps lock and the numlock keys do not respond. Which of these would be the most likely cause of this issue? Would it be a BCD configuration mismatch? Would it be an invalid file association? Would it be a hardware failure? Would it be a DLL conflict? Or would it be out of disk space? A desktop computer is freezing randomly during the day. When the system stops, there's no status lights flashing. The caps lock and numlock keys don't respond. Which of these is the most likely cause of this issue? A BCD configuration mismatch, an invalid file association, a hardware failure, a DLL conflict, or out of disk space? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can find out what that answer is going to be. Whenever I start going through the details of these questions and these troubleshooting, you'll notice in the exam objectives, there is a list of things you need to know how to troubleshoot. There are obviously thousands of things that could go wrong with a computer, a huge number of things. But fortunately, we can categorize a huge majority of these into certain categories that are listed in the exam objectives. So if you're trying to figure out what things do I need to know how to fix, what type of hands-on do I really need to have, this section of the exam objectives really gives you some nice insight. And you'll be able to step through each one of those and know, oh, I need to know how to do this. I need to know how to do this. I need to know how to do this. It really does spell it out quite nicely for you in being able to know exactly the things you're going to run into. This is a particularly nasty problem. It's really bad when your desktop computer is freezing randomly during the day. So hopefully you'll be able to do that as well. In the chat room, people are saying, are we covering 902 here? Yes. Every other question has been about 902 today. You'll notice when I go through the answers, you'll notice there's a link at the bottom of those slides that tells you what section and what exam that came from. So you'll be able to keep track of those whenever you start going through them. Let's see how we did with this particular one. This is another one where we're not completely sure. As we step through troubleshooting this, 65% of you said it's hardware failure. 15% of you, though, said DLL conflict, which is exactly the same percentage of people that said you're out of disk space. 5% said it's a BCD configuration mismatch, and 1% said it's invalid file association. These are horrible problems to try to troubleshoot, because if everything just hangs, if everything completely freezes up, there's nothing there. You didn't get an error message. You can't go into any part of the operating system to see what's going on. The mouse probably isn't moving around the screen. You press the numlock button, the light's not turning on and off. You push the caps lock button, the light's not turning on and off. It's frozen hard. It is stuck. There's nothing going on. Now, fortunately, almost in this scenario, what didn't happen tells us a lot about what could have happened with this. If you get a system that's completely hung, but you're still able to terminate bad applications by pressing the Control-Alt-Delete for the task manager in Windows. In Mac OS, it's the force quit with the Command-Option-Escape. If you're able to at least bring that up, at least the system is still running. But very often, especially in this scenario, we really weren't able to get anything out of this. So the only option you have is to power off the system and power it back on. Maybe there will be commands you can go through and view, and you can see what happened in the Windows event viewer just prior to it not putting any more events into the event viewer. This could also be related to security. You could have malware that's completely hanging the system. That sometimes will occur. But probably most often with these types of problems, it's some type of hardware issue. This may be the moment, because we're not getting a software error. The operating system isn't giving us a blue screen. It's not telling us something happened when we boot it up. It's just stopping. So this is a really challenging issue to be able to figure out the details of this. That's why hardware diagnostic would probably be a good step at this point. Be able to go through what these possible problems might be, and then you'd be able to at least run a memory check, run a check of the storage device, see if you can get any errors to occur with the hardware, especially with the graphics. Run a lot of graphics, really get the CPU pumping, see if you can figure out, is it heat related? These are the things that a diagnostic will be able to tell you. Now, it takes time, of course, to run the diagnostic. That's your downside, is now this system is coming out of production. You're not able to use this computer anymore because it's going to run through these diagnostics. Very often you'll find hardware diagnostics built into the BIOS. You might also have diagnostics you can run in the operating system that come from the motherboard manufacturer. There may be hardware diagnostics for specific types of hardware in the system that you can run. So that might be the scenario you run into as well. But this is why when we say in this question, the most likely cause of this issue based on these 5 options, hardware failure by far of these 5 is really the most likely cause of this issue. A BCD configuration mismatch, that stands for the boot configuration data. Whenever you start a Windows system, the boot configuration data maps out for the computer where Windows is located and how it should boot the system. If you have multiple Windows configurations, maybe you have multiple Windows installations and they're in different file folders or in different partitions, the BCD can even pop up an option on the screen to ask you, which Windows do you want to run? Do you want to run your Windows 7 partition, your Windows 8 partition, or your Windows 10 partition? And it's the boot configuration data that provides that information. If your BCD has a corruption, it's been deleted, and there's a problem, it will give you a message that says, well, I can't start Windows. I have no idea where it is. I cannot find an operating system on this computer. That at least you're getting feedback. It's not going to hang. It's not going to not tell you what's going on, so it can't be a BCD configuration mismatch. Invalid file associations is another scenario where you're starting an application, you're clicking on a doc file, and nothing happens. It tells you, I don't know what to do with this doc file. That's another scenario where you're at least getting feedback as to the type of problem that you're occurring. An invalid file association would never completely hang your system. It might give you a bunch of error messages, but it's not going to hang your system. You've got DLL conflict, which is another software-based issue with an application that's trying to access a DLL, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do with that library. Most of the time, if there's an error with that, the application fails. You'll get a message on the screen. Maybe you get a blue screen, but probably not. But the DLL conflict at least tells you something. So it's another scenario where it's not completely hanging the system. It's just giving you a message that either I'm not able to perform this function, or I performed it and the information I got back was completely wrong. Perhaps there's a DLL conflict I need to work through. And out of disk space, that is probably the only one I could possibly lean towards as a second best guess in this scenario. But even most of the time with Windows, with Linux, with Mac OS, you're going to get a message on the screen that says, your hard drive space, your storage space, your SSD, whatever you're using to store data is getting very low, and we need to do something about it. In Windows, of course, it pops up a screen that says, let's clean things up. Clear out your cache, delete these things. You've at least gives you a way to at least get a little bit of room back. Very rarely is an operating system going to use up all of the disk space and then completely hang completely. It's going to give you a message. It might fail. There might be certain applications that fail, or it might give you a blue screen, but it's not going to completely stop the world if that particular thing happens. So out of disk space, not the practical answer here. The best possible answer of these 5 is going to be a hardware failure, or C. 68% of you chose hardware failure. That's what I would choose as well. If I was going through this list of what could it possibly be, that's what I would go through in my list. I would start with hardware and I would work it out from there. This list of questions we had today and everything that we need to know about this exam comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So you have to have these objectives. People ask me all the time, what do I need to know to take the exam? It's all in here. It's extensive. This should be the first thing you download before you start your studies. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and download it. It should be the last thing you download and look through before you take your exam, because it's a great checklist. If there's anything in these objectives you don't recognize that you could not explain to someone else, then you need to study that topic a little bit more. Every single one of the topics we talked about today came directly from the set of objectives. Make sure you have these. They will be everything for you when you walk into that exam room. Tells you everything you need to know. So make sure you're aware of that as well. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A. I can't believe it either, but we do one of these every month. And of course, all of the archives are available on my website. You can go back and watch any replay at any time. The next one of these that we're going to do for A+ is on December the 5th, next month. But of course, I do one of these almost every week. Next week is Network Plus. The week after that is Security Plus. You're welcome to come back for those as well. If you're looking at this video, it's well past December the 5th. You're wondering, when is the next one of these things going to be? Go to professormesser.com/calendar, and it will tell you exactly when the next one of these is going to be. Make sure you have a look at when that's going to happen, then you'll know when to show up. And there's, of course, on that same calendar, links that you can use to get onto a notification email list, or you can add it to a Google Calendar, and it'll pop up and it'll share my Google Calendar with you for these study groups. So it'll just pop up on your calendar on your mobile device, and you'll know exactly when that's going to be. Stick around. Even though the Q&A is done, I'm going to open up the phone lines. People call in. You can ask questions from the chat room for the folks that are already there. We'll go through some Q&A. You can talk about anything. Doesn't have to be A+, doesn't have to be technology related. It could be anything you'd like. Of course, I do have A+ questions every day on the Twitter. You can go to professormesser.com/Twitter, and you'll get an A+ question Monday through Friday. Also, videos, make sure, and especially for those of you doing A+, the new A+ videos will be coming out shortly. They're going to be put on the YouTube. So if there was ever a time that you would want to subscribe to a channel and hit that bell, this would be the time to do it, because there's going to be a slew of new videos coming out all about the 1001, the 1002 exams. I'm in production right now. I'm shooting new videos. I'm editing videos. I've got a bunch of them out there waiting, but I don't want to put them out right now. It's November, and we don't have a new exam yet. But there will be new videos out there. You might want to prepare for that by going to professormesser.com/YouTube. All my course notes are available at professormesser.com/A+CN. It's a great way to support the site. And thank you for those of you that already have, as well as my A+ pop quiz collections at professormesser.com/PQC. Of course, every month, come back. We'll do some more of these. It'll be great. And I love doing the Q&A. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for being here. Stick around for the next hour. I've got plenty more Q&A from people that will be calling in and putting questions in the chat room, and some questions already coming in there. So we'll be able to answer those. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. The new A+ exam will probably be released on January the 15th. And the current A+ exams will probably still be around until July the 15th. So there will be this overlap period between January and July, or you could take either one of them. So that way, if you've been studying, suddenly they don't cut you off. You get a little bit of a ramp where you can, I need to hurry up. I have 6 months now. The clock starts ticking. I have 6 months. I've got to get this done. Especially if you've already taken one of the exams, you have to pass both of those exams in that same exam series to be able to earn your A+ certification. If you take one of them and the exam series is retired on July the 15th and you didn't take the second one, or you weren't able to pass the second one, you have to start over again. So you don't want to be that person who has to start over again. That would be bad. Let's get these phone lines up and running. I've got plenty of those. So the question, I'm going to answer the question in a moment. So what do I do? Which set do I take? We'll answer that in just a second, because I first need to call in to my own phone lines, or else you won't be able to call in to the phone lines. And I'll tell you in just a moment how you do that. How does that work? Well, I have to call in first. It's all based in the cloud. So I will call into the cloud myself, and we will figure this out. Let me go to my host a show. I'm going to host a show online. I thought I was hosting a show. Yes, well, we're hosting another one. Let me call into this, and I'll let you call into this. We'll get this up on the screen, and then I will call in at the same time. There's nobody here that will do this but me. So this is the challenge we have, is that I'm a one-man show in this scenario. But this only takes a moment. So bear with me. as I type through this, and it says, hi, do this, type this thing in. And then I do. I type this stuff into my screen, and I hit a pound sign, and it says,
Sure, your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, sure, machine, who's not a real person. I will type that in, and we're going to see if that works or not. And if it does,
welcome.
Well, see, welcome. So at least I know that I'm here. So in the chat room, the question was, which one of these exams do I take then? If I am going to plan for this setup, and in January the 15th, there's a whole new set of exams that comes out, what do I do? How am I going to make this happen? So it's really more about how long it takes you to study for a certification exam. So you need to think about this. It's really 2 certification exams. Currently, it's the 901 and the 902. The newer ones will be the 1001 and the 1002. So if it takes you a month to go through the content, you're already in the industry, you're very familiar with the content, you spend about a month going through the details, and then you go take the certification exam, you can have this done next month. You have this done December, January, and you're A+ certified. If that's your scenario, do that. If it takes you 2 months, do that. Get your A+ certification. Do not wait to get certified. There are many more benefits to having the certification in your pocket than not having it in your pocket. So that's the important consideration, is timing. Now, if you're the kind of person who would prefer having a very long ramp, someone like me, it takes me 6 months to study for a certification. Sometimes it takes me 9 months. It has taken me a year to study for my certification. In those scenarios, if you're like me and life is crazy and you know you're not going to be able to get this done by July the 15th, then I would recommend getting the 1001 and the 1002 exam objectives and studying those topics. And there will be videos and books and things available in January for you to really understand a lot more of those. There are not a lot of changes to these exams. They are very, very similar to each other. I've not actually run the numbers yet, but I will, to see just how many objectives are new. I think actually we could do this. So I know some of you have called in. You're on hold. I'm sorry. We'll get to you in just a moment for this. But let me find the list. I think I might have the list of differences in these two handy. Do I? And then we can look together to see what the differences are. I need to go to my Google Drive where I keep all this nonsense. And I think I have a list of what's new. So let's just look at the 1001. What has changed in the 1001? This should be interesting. I'm going to bring this up. We're going to look at this as 2 pages. There we go. Move this out of the way. Click on this. Move this other thing. So most of this is here. I need to change this first page, but let me show you what I got here so you can at least see. What I do is I go through the exam objectives, and anything that's the same, I mark as green, and anything that is different, I mark as yellow. So I know what to change in my videos as I go along. You'll notice just on this first page, there's a lot of green. Anything that's purple, by the way, is something that has changed enough that I need to, it's similar content, but I need to add a little bit more to it. There are some sections though, there's one that has a lot of yellow in it, but most of this is green. So that's the good part of this. Is in the 902 exam, almost identical to this. You know, some sections are all brand new, but it's not a lot of exam objectives. Some of these, you know, given a scenario, install and maintain various print technologies, laser, inkjet, thermal, impact, and virtual. It's all the same as the current version. The thing that's new, 3D printers. 3D printers aren't in the 901, but they added them in the 1001. So things like that were new. Troubleshooting, almost identical. So that's a good part of this. We don't have to worry so much. If you did study the 901 and you did study the 902, and then as it turns out, your life goes crazy and you're not able to get it done by July 15th, you're still in good shape. You just have to learn a couple of extra things. So that part's good. If you're worried about the details, that's what that's about. So that's my answer to you is, how do I figure this out? It's a question you need to ask yourself. How long is this going to take me? You need to get that A+ certification in your pocket as quickly as possible. You need to know exactly how long it's going to take. That's the way you do it. Let's go to the calls. I got some folks that have called in. We'll start with the 254 area code. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Are you there, caller? Hi, caller. I hear somebody that's there. Are you there,
Oh,
caller?
yes, I'm here.
Hey, what's your name? Where are
I'm
you calling from?
Hey, my name's Jay. I'm calling from Texas. And first of all, I just want to thank you for all the videos and everything you put out. And it really helped me out a lot when I was
Great.
studying and trying to get into IT.
You're welcome,
And
sir.
I really appreciate it.
Very welcome.
So,
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you watching them.
Yeah. So my question to you is, I'm kind of like stuck. Now, I have went backwards in doing my certification.
Okay.
And what I did first is I got Security Plus first. Then I took some of your advice while I was listening to you. And you said, well, basically to get a good firm grip of the security side, you got to know what you're doing with the network.
Oh, yeah.
And being as though I had some experience in networking, but not just enough. So I said, hey, let me go back into network and let me get this Network Plus and let me, refresh a little bit so I know exactly what I'm doing, because I'm not actually doing it right now,
Right.
but I plan to do it in the future.
Okay.
So I went and got the Net Plus. So once now that I have both, I'm kind of stuck because I had an opportunity to do the A plus. So then when I was asking around, trying to get some advice, most people were saying, well, you got the Security Plus and the Net Plus, so you don't need the A plus. So I'm thinking, now what I want to do is I want to go more the security route, and I was going to take something like a CEH or more stuff with security in mind. So
Logical.
I'm kind of stuck. I'm kind of stuck to say, should I really take the A plus exam just to say that I have the cert, or should I just forego it and just keep on going down the security route?
Well, let me tell you how I did it with those 3 exams. The first of those 3 exams I took was the Security Plus. The second of those 2 exams that I took was the Network Plus, and the last of those 3 exams that I took was the A plus. At the time, I was working for a network and security centric company. I was working for Network Associates, which at the time was a conglomeration of Network General and McAfee Associates. So I was doing tons of firewalling and antivirus and enterprise management of those systems and packet captures. And there was a help desk even, and PGP was part of that. It was a mix of different types of networking and security technologies. And so I took the Security Plus because I thought I need to know as much as I can about the security side. I had come from Network General, which was very focused on network management. I'm now we've merged with this company that's huge in security. Let me get at least some paperwork on my resume to show, look, at least he knows what he's talking about. And of course, we got tons of training internally within the company. And I became expert in our product line, of course, and I got our own certifications from McAfee for, at the time, Gauntlet Firewall and McAfee Antivirus and EPO and all of those other McAfee products. But then I realized I need to also prove to people that I have the chops on the network side that I came from. So for that one, that was an easy one for me. I took Network Plus. After doing those 2, I thought I had a pretty good grasp of hardware. And of course, all of these technologies that you work with security, firewalls, proxies, and even the operating systems themselves, Linux especially, it's useful to have a good foundation in the fundamentals of how to get those things running. I'd worked with hardware for years in the industry, but I had never really gone through a certification program on the hardware. And you start to learn things that you sort of skip over. When you're using a computer, you don't think about the dual channels of memory and how they are upgraded and configured. And so I'm reading about this in A plus thinking, well, that's why I'm buying 2 sticks at a time. That's why it recommends to put 2 of them at a time and put them in for the best overall throughput. So I went back and I started learning more about that, which to answer your question, I don't know that professionally it helped me to get the A plus, and that may be your goal with getting the A plus, but I felt I was missing something personally that needed to make me more of a well-rounded technologist. And so for me, going back and getting the A plus was more about my personal drive to learn more with this technology. It really didn't have much to do with what I was going to do professionally in my career. So that's where most people need to make that decision. It sounds like your decision is more career focused. I need to get a job. I need to get a better job. I want to get a job doing something with security. I need to do something that employers are going to look at and say, yeah, we need to give him a job doing the security thing. And in that scenario, you need to find out what those employers are asking for. Go out and see what type of job postings they're putting on the internet, what type of things that they're looking for, not even necessarily in an entry-level security. See for their senior security engineers, what type of things are they looking for? Are they looking for CEH? Do they even mention it? Are they looking for CISSP? Do they even mention it? Do they even mention Security Plus? Do they mention any certifications at all? It changes depending on what organization you're looking at. And if you have an opportunity in your local area to go to a Cisco user group meeting, a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting, and meet people doing security in those places, now you've got connections and you can ask them in the room while you're looking at them, I'm looking for an entry-level job to get me into security. What do you guys look for to have somebody there? And they'll tell you, which is even better. Is they'll tell you, oh, well, if you want to work for us, here's the type of things you need. You need this kind of experience, you need this kind of certification, and you need this kind of professional, whatever it is. That may be the best way to approach this, because depending on where you are in the world or even in the country, you may get very different answers to any of those questions depending on what type of organization you're asking about.
Okay, that's pretty much streamlined, and yeah, that's the only thing I wasn't doing. That's probably was, well, I was asking people that was in the industry, but I wasn't like, I haven't yet went out and kind of networked outside my realm to say, okay, these guys in these industry go to some maybe some networking groups and ask them those specific questions, or I haven't been looking online either for the job postings to see exactly, because I know they were saying that because me, I'm basically a military affiliate, so there was just a lot of people out here saying, well, as long as you have Security Plus and you have they have security clearance, hey, you're good to go. You don't need this and that. But and when I explained to them my situation, they'd be like, well, it sounds like you just taking A+ for ego. Because you really don't need it. I don't know why you're wasting your time. So, but I was kind of like, as I go through the material, I say, okay, some of the stuff I do know, and some of the stuff now I know because now I'm going through it, And I was and I was also going through your videos, and I was like, okay, there's some things that now I see why this is why it is, and it starts to be a lot even more clearer. So that's why I was kind of like, okay, I know if I do go this route, I'm going to burn a little bit more time to learn this, and it's going to take away from something else, and I want to really want to go forward. So I just want to make sure that I'm making the right choice.
There's not a rail that people get on and they have to go down this rail to be able to get to that ultimate destination. In IT, there are many ways to get to that final destination, and everybody has a different path. They have a different set of interests. There's different things going on in the world around them. And you're right. Sometimes it's opportunity with these local organizations or local people that where suddenly they've got a big project going on. They're going to go to their LinkedIn and send out an email to everybody and saying, we have to hire 5 people right now. Send me your resumes. That's the best possible scenario. You don't get into that scenario unless you do the work ahead of time and meet those people and get you don't have to go to dinner with them, but get a professional relationship with them, know who they are, know who they work with, know what they do, and be always pinging and updating and finding out what's going on. It can only help you in the long run.
All right. Yes, I would take that advice. Appreciate you taking my call, and thanks again for everything you do and all the information that you put out.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it as well. Have a good time with that. Let me know how it goes, and if we need to do a plan B and kind of circle back. Okay, we've done these things. Now what's next? We can have that conversation too.
Will do. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for calling. That's always something you should think about doing, by the way, is networking. We don't think about doing it enough. There was a conversation going on, and I'm sorry, callers, I'll be with you in just a moment. We got a full board. There was a conversation going on Reddit just a couple days ago, and I think it was in the CompTIA subreddit, where people were asking, I don't have experience. They won't hire me without experience, which means I'm not going to get experience. What do I do? And there's a ton of things you can do. The networking piece is one of those. Volunteering is another piece. And I'm not sure why people discount or dismiss the idea of volunteering your time, especially if it's for an organization that can really use your expertise. One day a month on a Saturday, you were going to play video games anyway. Why not stop in for half a day, check over their systems, make sure their antivirus is at the latest version, make sure nobody's infected, make sure the backups are performing properly, and then they're good for the next week. that's a win-win where you get practical experience. You're working with professionals. They're expecting you every day. You're working as if you were earning a salary at that location, and goes on your resume. And you get great stories to tell. That's another important part of this, that even if you don't have formal education, what stories do you have? Have you built your own home lab? In your home lab, what tasks have you done? Have you set up a firewall? Have you configured an IPS? What did you find when you set up your firewall and your IPS? Did you find anyone attacking you? What were they attacking you with? What did you find out about it? All of those things are stories you should have in your interview. And you might not have any practical, formal experience, and you've just given somebody an entire story about what you did with security in your environment that, by the way, is exactly the kind of security they're doing in their environment. And I can say that because I used to do that. So make sure you go through that process and think about those. Back to the phone lines. Thank you for holding, caller. Hi, what's your name? Where are you calling from? 502. You heard the beep, didn't you? I was beeping in your ear. That was me. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Raj. How are you?
Hey, Raj. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
Well, I don't know if you remember me, but I've called a number of times in your previous monthly live sessions.
Great. Thanks for calling back.
Actually, I live in Southern California. I said I live in Southern California, even though my area code is from Kentucky, because I grew up in Louisville.
Oh, fantastic. Well, one side or the other. Works for me. What can we do for you today?
Right. What I noticed on your 901 lecture notes, those PDFs that you mentioned.
Yes.
I don't know if this was an oversight or this was done purposely, but I noticed you haven't included any information on display technologies that, like, as you lecture in one of your videos on display technologies.
It's a plus or minus for these. In fact, the 901 and the 902 course notes I created were kind of some of the first iteration of course notes that we had. And what people told me is that these have the important pieces. I've pulled out what I felt was the most important parts of my videos and put them into the course notes. And people said, well, that's great, but I want everything that you ever say in your videos to be put into the course notes. And they're not wrong in wanting that. I think that's a perfectly reasonable expectation. But it also increases the size of the course notes by probably a factor of 4 or 5. You'll notice when you get to my Network Plus course notes and my Security Plus course notes, you will see a much more extensive set of notes that really does capture everything I say and put on the screen and all the graphics and everything. For the 901 and 902, I made some decisions about what do I put in there. So I didn't put every possible thing you would run into. So you're right. There were certain topics that I might show a picture of a video interface, for example. I show you what a display port looks like. I show you what the VGA looks like. I show you what HDMI looks like. And I have those in my course notes. But you're right. I don't go through a lot of the detailed specifications and advantages and disadvantages of my course notes because I had to make a decision somewhere in that list of what to do. So that's some of the philosophy or the thoughts I had whenever I put those together.
Also, I wanted to know, do you offer 901 or 902 exam vouchers so we could pay exam?
I don't. I used to have a discount program that was really sponsored by my good friends at GTS Learning. Well, GTS Learning was purchased by CompTIA earlier this year. So they effectively are no longer exist as an individual entity. They're now CompTIA. And when that happened, they no longer were able to offer those discounts. So unfortunately, on my site, I don't have any of those discounts available any longer. The only one I really can mention with that can really help is if you are in school and or you have a .edu email address, you can go to the academic store on CompTIA's website, which effectively gives you a 50% discount, 50, like just more than 49 and less than 51. That's a pretty extensive discount. So if anybody's listening and they have that edu email, that might be a good option.
Too bad I'm not in school.
Yeah, this is the problem for a lot of us, unfortunately.
Yeah. One last thing I want to ask you is, right now. I forgot.
It was right there.
Yeah. In terms of getting a job, like you said, basically volunteer initially.
That's certainly an option. Sure.
And okay, but how? I mean, what? How many applications? Oh, that's a dumb question. What is the? I mean, how demanding is the job market out there for A+ certified people at an entry level?
It's a very common question. It's one that I try to make people aware that nothing exists in a vacuum in the IT industry. No person walking in for any job is coming in with exactly the same credentials, the same experience, the same professional education or formal education, and also the extra X factor piece that we look for whenever we're trying to find somebody who's right for a job. You don't just look at, if I have an A+, can I get a job? It's really, I have these set of industry certifications. I have a set of experiences that I can talk about, whether it's a job where you volunteered or it's a past position that you've held. I've got these things that I've done with formal education. Maybe I have a 4-year degree. Maybe I have an AA. Maybe I have a degree from another organization. And then you've got these other things that you might have done. Maybe you know people in the industry. You've gone to these study groups that I mentioned. You've created these things in your lab at home, and you have these stories that are associated with it. All of those things count. All of those things matter. And of course, the way you present yourself when you show up with the interview. All of that has to work together. So, of course, you should be able to get those certifications. And when you get that A+ certification, it will help you along the road to making that happen. But you also have to do these other things as well. You can't just focus on certifications and say, I've got them, now I need a job. You have to do it. None of it's easy. But you have to put together a resume that will dwarf everybody else who's trying to get that job. And if you can start putting together those pieces, creating those stories, having the home lab, creating the contacts in the industry, you will find yourself being told that jobs are available from people that you knew in the industry. Hey, if you were looking for help desk, we just had 2 people quit. Now's the time to put in your resume, send it to me. One of the things I mention about that is I talk about meeting these people and getting on their LinkedIn accounts because that's a great way to professionally network. The reason that I mention that is that many of these organizations that are hiring have hiring bonuses for the people that bring them people to hire. So if you meet an IT professional, they may even say to you, oh yeah, get on my LinkedIn and absolutely send me your resume. Because if they're the one that hands your resume to HR, you not only get a job, but they also get a bonus. So it behooves them. It is an advantage to them to also network with you. So not only do you get something out of this, but they also do. It's a win-win for everybody, and the company gets somebody good that they can put into this position as well. Take advantage of that. That's something companies are willing to pay because it is much less for a company to pay an employee a bonus than it is for them to pay a percentage of your salary to a recruiter. They are more than happy to take that resume from that person. Make sure you take advantage of that.
Oh yeah, and one final question. I don't mean to hog your time. On CEUs, A+ certification.
Yep.
So you definitely have to submit CEUs to maintain your certification, right? Unless you do a different, like you go up to the next higher level, like network or CCNA or something like that, then you don't have to.
There are 4 or 5 different things you can do to renew your certification. Some of them are to perform a single task. Some of them are to perform multiple tasks. And as I even mentioned at the beginning of the study group, there is the CertMaster CE, where you literally take an online course for 3 to 6 hours and it renews everything. So that may be a way that you might want to look at doing it. That a lot of people I don't think even realize exists. So there's the CompTIA website has everything you need to know about renewal. They step through it in detail. You've got a lot of options, not just taking an exam and not just acquiring CEUs. There's a lot of different things you can do these days.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the call. Thank you.
Time to give somebody else a chance. Sorry, I took up too much time.
Not at all. Appreciate the call. Thanks so much for being there and calling in again. Let's go back to the phones then, because there are people from the 571 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. How are you doing?
All right. Perfect. Well, my name is Laith. I am from north of Virginia, Washington, D.C. area.
Welcome.
Great area for IT.
It is.
Yeah. So I'm currently in a situation where I haven't finished school. So I started school back in 2015, community college. And, I was out for a while, for 2 years. Then I decided for about a year ago to start the A+. But I kept working. I was going back and forth. Now I'm not in a job. I'm out of a job. But I'm currently trying to work on my A+. But yeah, I'm still stuck in the beginning. Now I'm pushing myself. Recently took a class in college for A+. But my issue now is that I see that the 1001 and 1002 is coming out. Now, would you recommend that I should just go for the 1001 and 1002, or just continue studying the 901, 902, and then take the 1001 and 1002 exam? As far as that is concerned.
If you have already gone down the road of studying the 901 and 902, go take those exams. Whether you take the 901, 902 or the 1001, 1002, you get exactly the same certification. It's not like the certification says on it, oh, you have the newer version. There are no versions. You either have the A+ certification or you do not have the A+ certification. It doesn't matter how you get there. And in fact, if you earn your A+ certification by taking the 901, 902, you're not going to take another certification exam again, probably, most likely. You will just continue to renew that certification as the years go on. So employers aren't expecting you to have a particular set of tests that you took. All they care is that you are A+ certified, and it doesn't matter how you get there. So my standard response is never, never, never wait to get certified. The current version of the A+ exam is going to be around until at least July the 15th, as we've been told. We think the new version of the A+ will come out in January. It might not. Maybe they push it. Maybe it ends up coming out in February or March, and you would have waited all that time. So don't rely on guesses and speculation and hopes for the future. Take what you can learn right now, especially since you've already been working on it, and go take those certifications before July and get your certification. It's in your pocket, and now you can present that on your resume.
Correct. So, yeah, I mean, currently I'm just in the benchmark of not benchmark, but in the beginning of the 901. I literally keep going back to the BIOS, and I never move forward as far as the videos.
Gotcha.
Now, do you think that it would be better to, because I feel like the software part of the software part, which is the 902, is easier for me. Would it be okay for me to go take the 902 and then go back to the 991, or they don't allow that?
It doesn't matter which order you take them in. You can take them in any order you want. You can take them as far apart from each other as you would like. Obviously, for the 900 series, we believe they are going to be retired in July the 15th. You just have to take both of them before July the 15th. It doesn't matter in which order you do that.
Okay. Second question here. As far as the Network Plus, Security Plus, and I'm not sure I'm sure you've heard of something called AWS, Amazon Web Services.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
As cloud services.
Yes.
Now, I know in the 1001 and 1002, there's going to be the 1001 there's going to be including cloud. Do you think that that I should take my Cloud Plus as far as CompTIA is concerned, and then go take AWS certified? Because there's a teacher that's going to be teaching me all of this within 6 months. So do you believe that's a good route as far as going down 6 months for the A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and AWS?
That is one that's going to depend on what people are looking at in your particular area. And in Virginia, I would imagine a lot of employers are looking for Amazon certified people. You would have to look around and see, are employers asking about Cloud Plus? A lot of the things on Cloud Plus are covered in the Amazon courses themselves. So you may not need that level of overlap, or you may find employers absolutely would like to have Cloud Plus as a foundation. It just depends on where you happen to live and what organizations you're going to work for. So that may take a little bit more research on your side, but it should be very apparent once you start looking through people hiring what they want. And then you realize, okay, well, I need to take Cloud Plus, or you'll decide nobody's asking for this. I can go straight to Amazon.
Correct. Yeah, because I'm going into networking. I just recently got into cloud, so I think that's the next route. Also, you can go down that path.
It's a very good route. It's very popular. A lot of employers are asking about it. It's just finding the right niche for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. In the chat room, some folks are asking about my course notes. They're $15 a piece for the digital version. Some people say, but wait, there's a $45 version. That's the physical version. I print these out and I ship them to you. It's the exact same thing that's in the digital version. But Mrs. Professor Messer said she wants a book version. And so I made her a book version. It turns out she's not the only one. A lot of people want the book version. If you purchase the book version, I give you the digital version for free. So there's a little bonus there. But it costs more to print. That's why it's more expensive. It's on paper. It's full color all the way through. It's a beautiful print. It's perfect bound. None of that spiral binding nonsense. And it's nice paper, and it's just a high quality product. And unfortunately, it just costs money. And it's effectively a pass-through. I try not to make money on the printed version, primarily just because it costs so much. So I don't care which one you get. From my perspective, it's a win-win either way. You're supporting the site. I just kind of give you the option which way this fits best for you. So that's the difference that's there. Let's go back to the phones, and then we'll talk about Mini DisplayPort and Thunderbolt in just a moment. That's one way to go about doing it. Let's go to fellow Floridian at 813 area code. Hello, caller. Are you there? What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, got to actually turn your name up there.
Can you hear me?
Hi, there you are. Hi, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Brandon. I'm calling from Florida.
Very good, Brandon. Brandon living close to Brandon, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. I'm from the Tampa area, so pretty close. I just want to start saying thank you for everything you've done, all the knowledge you put out and stuff like that. The notes are great. I got the practice test. It was really helped.
Oh, great.
So I'm at the stage now where I'm trying to practice kind of like the troubleshooting, and everything's kind of working great on all my stuff. I was wondering, how do I make stuff like not work so that I can use it to practice troubleshooting?
This is a challenge I run into because I'd like to present troubleshooting things in my videos, and finding a system that is broken isn't necessarily the easiest thing. It's a little easier when it's an operating system problem. And so one of the things I tend to use if somebody says, like we had a question today that talked about the boot configuration data was corrupted, which happened to be the wrong answer, but I gave an example of when you would see this. Well, that's pretty easy. You can go into the BCD editor in Windows and delete the whole thing and just mess it up completely, or change the C drive to the D drive, which doesn't exist on my computer. You reboot, and now Windows doesn't work. So how do you fix that? And then you need to know how to repair the BCD if your system won't boot to begin with. Those are pretty easy. Well, it gets a little more complicated if you're trying to break the master boot record, for example, or or a partition boot record. You may have to use a hex editor to go onto your drive itself and edit those files. Sometimes you can get a third-party program to do these types of things, especially programs that are specific to partitioning, and you can clear out sections of the partitions because those utilities allow you to do that. They allow you to be that dangerous on your computer. Obviously, you would only do this in a virtual machine or a non-production system. Please do not do anything like this on your computer you use day to day. But that's how I approach these problems. You're going to have a problem if somebody says, I need to have, what about bad memory? Well, you just can't make bad memory. In those cases, it helps if you know somebody who works in the technical field, who has a system that's running badly, and you can get some screenshots or connect it up to some video and get some video of that. But it's much easier if you put it in a virtual machine with VMware's workstation or VirtualBox, and then you can start messing around with the boot sectors and watch as your system breaks, and then watch as you start up with your PE or your Windows startup disk. You go to the command prompt, you run the program settings at the command prompt to rebuild the master boot record, to rebuild the BCD. You restart the system and suddenly things work again. Breaking it is a great way to learn what to expect and how to repair these things, because I don't think you learn anything unless you're fixing something that's broken. So it's an excellent way to do a lab.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. So just to kind of clarify real quick on that,
Sure.
Because I have a Raspberry Pi at home with the Raspberry on it. Now, would that be a good thing specific to the 902, because I know more of the software stuff? Would the Raspberry Pi kind of be useful to use, like to break things on that and to kind of use it as like what you were mentioning?
As far as the 902 is concerned, probably not. There's no break fix on the 901 or the 902 that really focuses on other operating systems other than Windows. There's a very small sliver of things that they talk about relating to Mac OS and Linux. A lot of it relates to how you use the utilities in those operating systems, but the concept of troubleshooting a startup problem in Linux or troubleshooting a startup problem in Mac OS doesn't exist in the 902, and I would not recommend you focusing on that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that. It's just there's a lot of stuff to go over, so
Yes.
I just want to try to make sure I don't go too over my head.
If you
and
go
make
to that
things more
last
complicated.
section of the 902 that talks about troubleshooting, they list out exactly the scenarios you should be able to troubleshoot. Stick to that, and you're going to be fine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Professor. I really appreciate your help.
I appreciate the call. Thanks. That's labs are a challenge with the A+. A lot of books have labs in them too. So you may run into books that say, here's a process you can go through to troubleshoot these problems. Break fix is so hard to emulate though. You kind of have to break it yourself and then try to figure out how to fix those things. Another phone call. We're going to go back to the mini DisplayPort and Thunderbolt are two different things. Mini DisplayPort and Thunderbolt, at least the first iterations of Thunderbolt, had exactly the same interfaces. And if you look at them, they look the same. What they did was take the mini DisplayPort and they put Thunderbolt on it, but included the mini DisplayPort with it. So you could use this one interface to put mini DisplayPort signals down, and it would work great. And when they included Thunderbolt with it, you also had a Thunderbolt link you could send along with it as well. So that's not really, they're kind of two separate things running on the same interface if you want to look at it that way. But you have to look at what you're plugging into. Does this only support mini DisplayPort, or does it support Thunderbolt with mini DisplayPort? Those would be the things you'd have to consider working through. Have all those there. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's go to, if I click the button, the 512 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? That's not me this time. Hi, caller.
Thanks,
There.
Professor. You answered my call already.
See, that was quick. That wasn't so bad. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Thanks. And I was trying to check the downloadable book.
You may want to mute the stream that you have on your computer there, because it's coming through as an echo just a little bit. And if you're able to pick up the phone and get off a speakerphone, that would help as well.
Yeah, I think it's better now. I'm sorry about that. So you already answered the question by letting me know, the different types and amount for each book for support. So I'm okay.
Yes. So
Thank you.
Is there a particular thing that you're focusing on, or a particular aspect of that you're trying to get through?
It's a book 901 and 902. So I was just trying to see which course notes to get.
Yep.
And I saw the one else have the quiz attached also for $30. I'll go ahead and get both 901 and 902 and then get the quiz also.
Perfect.
That's about $60.
That's correct. And I appreciate the support. Thank you for that. And I think both the course notes and the Q&A are, as I mentioned before, useful things to have. And if you're planning to get a good book and watch the videos with that, you're going to be in good shape.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. There is that's sort of on my website where people get. I've combined both the 901 and 902 together in the printed course notes book. I don't sell them individually. Although in the next version of these, I guess the 1001, 1002, maybe I'll consider doing that. Had to do with the number of pages. It's crazy nonsense when you get into physical printing. And my printing is all done remotely on demand. They take care of everything. They ship it to you. They handle the returns. It's an amazing group of people. I use Verbante for that. And that's why I put it all together, because it's less expensive to put them all together into a single book and get them to you. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to the 907 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing? This is Travis from Northern Virginia.
Welcome, Travis. What can we do for you?
Well, I heard you say that GTS had actually become part of CompTIA, and I was wondering, are they still offering the live labs, or has that gone away? And if so, do you know of any other services similar to that?
Everything went away. Everything that was GTS Learning has been fully encapsulated into the CompTIA product line. The live labs are no longer available through CompTIA or through GTS Learning and or CompTIA. And although they're books that they used to have now also been integrated into the CompTIA line of materials. CompTIA bought a number of companies at the beginning of the year. GTS Learning was one. There was another company they bought as well. I don't keep up with these as much as I should. But they kind of combined all of this together into a new series of products that they have. So that what used to be in the GTS Learning world has now morphed into a completely different animal that's sold differently, marketed differently, and they don't partner with third parties like GTS Learning did with me. So unfortunately, I can't offer any of those. And as it turns out, the live labs aren't available through them either. Those live labs they had, though, are available from other places. And I don't have a good answer for you as to what those are or where those would be. Let me see if I can find where that might be. I'm going to type a few things in here and see if I can find those pieces of where they might be. It's hard because a lot of the old pieces of this are still sort of on their site. Contractually, they have to keep these things up and running for a certain amount of time for folks. But I'll have to find those. If you go to the top of the website, contact us and send me a note. I know the folks over at that who put together the labs themselves, because it is a third party, and I can send you at least some information about where you might be able to go.
All right, that'll be perfect. I'll go ahead and send you that. And thank you for all you do. It's been immensely helpful.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the call.
All right, have a good day.
I liked those live labs from GTS Learning. It's just one of the challenges is that I don't believe they're sold directly. I think it's a third party that has to help support those. So I'll have to find out more about that. I don't know. I just worked with GTS Learning directly, so it was very easy. So I don't have any more details on that. Back to the chat room. Let's get some questions from there. One question came through, and some folks were asking about this. If you could load Windows 8 on both a hard drive and a VirtualBox to do some break fix. And yes, you could. And in fact, I will point you to a website called modern.ie. modern.ie. It's a website designed for Microsoft professionals. It is one that was designed for people to be able to test their browser-based applications that they build. The problem, though, is if you're developing in Windows, there's a lot of different windows you would have to develop in. You'd have to develop in Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10. You have to have some way to use all of those different operating systems. What Microsoft created was a website where you can download virtual machines that are running Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 for free. You can download these VMs and run them in your virtual machine. In fact, let's choose Windows 10, and I'll choose VirtualBox, Vagrant, VMware, Hyper-V, or Parallels. So your VM options are covered, whichever one you're running. If you're running VirtualBox, you can choose VirtualBox and then download a zip file. It's probably a multiple gig zip file that has a VM ready to go. Windows is already there. You start it up. They give you the instructions on here of how to log in. They say, here's the password to the VM, which is PASSW0RD with a capital P at the beginning and an exclamation mark at the end. And now you've got a VM of Windows 10. And I've looked through the licensing of this. So the only thing that you're really limited is you can't use this as a production Windows system. This must be used for testing. It can only be used for lab use, which is, as it turns out, exactly what we'd like to do with it. is use it as a lab. So if you're someone you're trying to get more Windows training, more Windows hands-on, you want to break it, you want to get all those things working, that's a great way to do it. So try to go through all of that. Try to figure out all the details of that and download what Microsoft gives you for free. That way you don't have to find installation disks. You don't have to find a license key from someone else. None of those things. Just go to modern.ie, modern.ie, and download those from there. Works great for having all those things there. I think that's whenever I start looking at the options available, that's the best one. Because then if you break something, you can take a snapshot in your VM, break it, and if you can't get back to where you were, you just revert back to the snapshot. Makes it easy. From the chat room, folks are asking, is there a quiz for the 22901 available in Spanish? And unfortunately, there is not. I am not fluent in Spanish at all. So unfortunately, I didn't create any Spanish. I have been considering getting some of this translated, but the challenge with that is how do you find somebody to translate it, and how do you do the quality assurance of the translation if you don't speak that language? That's my challenge. And I'm concerned, because what if they translate it and it turns into something that it shouldn't be, and I have no idea. It's just not any good. That's not what I'm looking for either, because you can't just translate. You can't just click a button. Hey, the translation's done. There's context. There is colloquialisms. Will my jokes translate properly? That's the problem. And yeah, you can't translate the translation back either. You can't see if they did it right. There's nuance in language that you can't get by doing an automated process. And the only way to know the nuance is if you knew the language to begin with. So that's really one of the major reasons why I haven't done that. Although it's a good idea. It's a great idea to do this. I just haven't done it. One of those challenges of making that happen. So it does have to be perfect. People in the chat room going, well, it doesn't have to be perfect. Yes, it does. Yeah, if it has my name on it, it has to be perfect. This is one of the differences I have in my creation of products versus perhaps philosophies from other places, is that I'm not going to put out a product unless it is the quality product I am expecting for anyone to get. I know what it takes to go through certification exams. In my career, I've probably taken 20 or more, 25 different certification exams and certifications. These are important things. They are life-changing things. They can make or break what you're doing in your career. They're also personally fulfilling things. You become more of a well-rounded technologist by knowing what's in these certifications. So it is important for me to create the best possible training materials possible. I don't want to have something that's just good enough. I see enough things in our industry that are just good enough, and that's not my philosophy. Mine is a little bit different. I want to create products that could stand up next to anything, and I think the only way to do that is if you put the time and the effort in to create that quality. So that's what I'm focusing on. Could it be could I put something out wasn't perfect and would it be good enough? Yes, it would. But not with my name on it. I'm not going to do that. So that's why. Does that limit the type of products that are made available and how fast they're made available? Yes, it does. I'm okay with that. That's one of those decisions that, from a business perspective, I have to make that balancing act, that decision. Could I pump out a lot more product that would not be as good? Yep, I could. But I prefer having a better product that I can be proud of and stand with that would help you better. So that's my philosophy anyway. And it's for better or worse. We're going to see. I'm still here. I've still got a live stream. You're still watching the videos. When you stop doing that, I'll know I've done something horribly, horribly wrong. And Mrs. Professor Messer will be looking at me like, what have you done? Do you know how to make coffee? Could you go get a job? And I'm worthless without that. So that would be trouble for everybody. That would be a problem. Since we're talking about virtual machines, what would I recommend on learning on Mac OS? Well, fortunately, the things you have to know about Mac OS on the exam are very limited. You have to know 4 or 5 different utilities. You have to know what the terminal is. You have to know what the console is. You have to know those types of things. And it's very easy to just know the high level of those. You don't actually have to know how to use the interfaces on the Mac OS. And the command lines that you have to know for Linux are identical to the command lines you have to know for Mac OS. Unfortunately, Linux is very accessible. You can download it from anywhere and get to a command prompt. So if you're going to use for instance, we did the chmod command. The chmod command in Linux, exactly the same as the chmod command in Mac OS. All of the commands you have to know on the Linux side are exactly the same commands from Mac OS. So fortunately, having a Mac OS interface for you to learn would be helpful, I think, overall as a technologist. Yes, if you can get your hands on a used Mac, or you have a library you can visit that has Mac OS, or a school or university, that'd be a great way to do it. Public universities have labs with these Macs in them that are accessible to you even if you're not a student. Because they are a public university, you're a taxpayer, you have the right to be there. So you can call the lab and say, hey, I'm studying for my A+, can I come in? When's the lab not busy? Do you have Mac OS? Do you have a Linux machine? They'll tell you, and they're happy to have you use it. Your local library may have some as well. Check with your local library. Do you have Mac OS machines? And you can become used to the interface. It's not an enormous difference. And you can open up the console, and you can open up a terminal session, and you can use these utilities. That may be a good way to do it. There are some third parties that do have cloud-based Mac OS access that you could use. I saw a few of them. There's not a lot, but there's a couple that provide cloud-based Mac OS, especially for developers. It's not incredibly expensive. It might be a good investment of $10 or $20 to get a couple of hours on a Mac OS desktop, and you're good. In fact, that's probably all you would need to be able to make that happen. So that might be an option too. It's just a remote desktop. You're in the system. Now you can use it as if you're sitting in front of a machine that's got Mac OS on it. Or go to Best Buy. They got Macs there. Go to the Apple Store. They got Macs there. You can play around with the interface. You might see everything you need in 30 minutes. In fact, you might like one. You might get one yourself. It just depends. And have that there. I think that's where if you're ever going through the details of that, and you're trying to figure out, what do I do to be able to make this happen? That's what you should do to be able to make this happen. I think that's a great place to go. You got lots of options to find those different things, and figure out the details of all of those operating systems. It helps if you do have a good knowledge of them. As it turns out, in the industry, there are a huge number of people in IT using Mac OS. It only helps if you know some way to get around this interface. You don't want to be in front of their laptop. They're asking you to fix a problem, and you're like, where does this, I don't know the mouse is funny. You don't want to be that person. So the more you know about those, the better off you're going to be, thankfully, with all of those. Well, I want to thank you also for being here. We got through 2 hours of Q&A and questions afterwards. Nobody even asked me about my Xbox exploits and what I've been doing. Not exploits, but things I'm doing on the Xbox. Didn't exploit anything. I'm not a hacker. That's not me. But this is good, though. I think we address the important things that actually can help you. And hopefully it has been a help. I want to thank you for being here. Thanks for being here for the first hour. Thank you for being here for the Q&A afterwards. These were great questions as well. I do one of these every month. The next one is December the 5th. Feel free to stop by or come back next week. We're doing a Network Plus one of these next week. And of course, the after show, you can ask any question you'd like. It doesn't have to be about Network Plus. We can ask any question associated with any of these topics. I want to thank everyone for being here. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group.